They're the old guard of the Republican Party, country club conservatives, Wall Street whisperers, and architects of the modern GOP's economic policy. While they rarely draw headlines or stir up populist rallies, establishment or pro-business Republicans have spent decades shaping the party's fiscal priorities, judicial appointments, and international posture. But in an era of insurgent populism and ideological flux, their influence has come under fire, even from within. Today, we take a closer look at the establishment wing of the Republican Party, who they are, what they believe, and what their future looks like. Part 1: Historical Origins and Rise. The establishment GOP, sometimes called the corporate wing, or Chamber of Commerce Republicans, emerged in the mid-20th century as the party moved from isolationism to internationalism, and from agrarian roots to business alignment. Think Dwight Eisenhower's moderation, Nelson Rockefeller's managerial technocracy, and George H.W. Bush's patrician diplomacy. These Republicans supported free trade, NATO, fiscal prudence, and deregulated markets. Their influence peaked from the 1980s through the early 2000s. Presidents like Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush promoted pro-business tax policy, robust defense spending, and relatively liberal immigration stances, all hallmarks of the establishment agenda. In Congress, figures like Bob Dole, Trent Lott, and Mitch McConnell helped build the modern Republican Senate, focused on judicial appointments, tax reform, and controlling the levers of legislative power. Part 2: What they believe. Establishment Republicans don't always agree on social issues, but they tend to coalesce around a few key principles. Economic policy. Favor lower corporate and income taxes, fiscal conservatism, and reduced regulation. They champion pro-business reforms and oppose populist trade wars or antitrust crackdowns. Trade and globalization. Generally pro-free trade and supportive of multilateral agreements like NAFTA and the WTO. They argue that U.S. leadership in global markets benefits both business and national security. Immigration. More likely than other factions to support expanded legal immigration, guest worker programs, and DACA-like protections, largely due to labor market and business considerations. Foreign policy. Support strong international alliances, NATO, G7, American leadership abroad, and measured military engagement. They are more hawkish than isolationist factions, but also favor diplomacy and stability. Institutional norms. Emphasize rule of law, procedural regularity, and institutional continuity, even when it means compromising to get incremental policy wins. This wing of the GOP often overlaps with business lobby groups, defense contractors, and large donors, including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Business Roundtable, and legacy PACs. Part 3: Influence and Infrastructure. What sets establishment Republicans apart from other factions is not just ideology, but infrastructure. They are deeply embedded in K Street lobbying firms in D.C., think tanks like the American Enterprise Institute and the Hudson Institute, long-standing political networks such as the Republican Governors Association and the National Republican Senatorial Committee, corporate donor pipelines and super PACs aligned with Fortune 500 interests. Figures like Mitch McConnell, former House Speaker Paul Ryan, Senator John Thune, and former National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow exemplify this faction's technocratic, pro-growth mindset. Their most visible policy achievements in recent decades include the 2001 and 2017 Republican tax cut, trade normalization with China, pre-2016, the appointment of hundreds of conservative judges under GOP Senate leadership. But as much as they've steered national policy, this faction increasingly finds itself playing defense within its own party. Part 4: Decline and Backlash. The rise of Donald Trump in 2016 marked a direct challenge to establishment Republicans. Trump ran against the swamp, trashed free trade deals, upended immigration orthodoxy, and railed against big business when convenient. In doing so, he captured a working-class base that viewed establishment figures as out-of-touch elites. Many establishment Republicans tried to adapt, backing Trump's agenda on judges and taxes while quietly disagreeing on trade or rhetoric. Others, like Jeff Flake or Bob Corker, retired or were primaried out. Donor influence also waned as small-dollar online fundraising fueled populist candidates less reliant on corporate PACs. Even after Trump's first term, the establishment faces pressure from both MAGA insurgents and nationalist intellectuals. In primaries, pro-business Republicans are often attacked as globalists or Rhinos. Despite this, the faction continues to wield power behind the scenes, especially in the Senate, governorships, and judicial strategy. Part 5: The Present and Future. As of 2025, establishment Republicans remain a crucial, if embattled, faction. Mitch McConnell, while no longer majority leader, continues to shape the judiciary. GOP governors like Brian Kemp and Chris Sununu represent a more traditional conservative governance style. Donor networks still bankroll centrist Republicans who can win suburban and swing state races. The challenge now is relevance. Will this faction regain dominance post-Trump? Can they adapt their message to appeal to younger, more populist-leaning voters while keeping business interests intact? Some are betting on moderation and pragmatism, arguing that a pro-growth, pro-stability message will resonate in the post-populist future. Others warn that the establishment's best days may be behind it. What's clear is this: whether in retreat or evolution, the establishment wing still helps fund, staff, and manage much of the Republican Party, even if it no longer defines its soul. From tax cuts to trade deals, establishment Republicans have shaped decades of GOP orthodoxy. But in a party increasingly defined by grievance and disruption, their path forward is uncertain. Next in the political faction series, the National Conservatives, a rising movement that blends traditional values with economic populism and foreign policy realism. If you like this content, help a brother out and like and follow.